Well, boys. Lots of
The
stuff
boys
going
are
on.
back in town.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff
It's been
happening.
another hot minute. Lots
Certainly
of hot
has.
takes. A lot of time for a lot of things to happen over 2 weeks.
A lot of
Good
time.
to be back.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
Great.
You seem so pleased.
I'm fine, mate. I'm all good.
This game is great.
I'm coming hot off an unbeaten cube at my birthday, which
That is very true.
which happened.
Yeah, I hope you really enjoyed your birthday. That was a good, mistakes were made. Yeah, sure, fine. But as long as you had a good day. it's fine.
Did you say mistakes were made for you turning up to his birthday?
No.
that where we're going?
I certain really obvious mistakes were made when I was playing Joe and Cube, and you know it was his birthday, so the event kind of.
Yeah,
to me.
I had.
I don't understand this. Like you keep going back to this same joke, and you know that every other day of the year I'm also going XO. So really weird.
Oh no, I forgot.
I was just proud of you for not having an all special energy deck with multi energy in it, Ram.
Wow.
I was really. That's growth. That's real growth there.
I got a positive record with.
I thought your deck was actually good.
Yeah, I mean, I got a positive record with my favourite card, so I'm pretty buzzing about it. To be honest.
Did Mr. Mime actually win any games?
I had Drunk Tamal playing my list, I swear.
You did, yeah. And
your deck was not bad. You had Zoroark and
Zoroark and lots of goodies. It was fun.
We had
an
Black
Dark
Smith
Ivysaur.
And you had some good definitely good pieces. It's just how it all came together.
I didn't end up playing Tamao, but I think you would have really hurt me with that Dark Ivysaur.
He had the weapons.
You would have really hurt me.
You were a slower setup deck, and Alex and Tamao's deck had ways to target stuff.
I think I would have gone XO if I kept Steven's Resolve.
Hello.
I don't think you're ever beating me.
You also left out the one card we're all given, Mr. Rabbi.
Yeah.
I did, yeah.
I have a custom card in my cube, and it's
Mysterious Pearl,
which is a broken Hisuian heavy ball. You can get any Pokemon from the prizes, and you don't have to shuffle the prizes either. So it fixes one of the worst mechanics in Pokemon, which is prize cards.
And Ben chose to handicap himself.
And Ben decided to not put that in his 60.
There was so much stuff I wanted to add.
But that is the first card on the list, really.
Steven's Resolve was 61, was it?
That's better than any of the individual Pokemon that you put into your deck.
Really,
like the extra count of any of those Pokemon.
I was really upset with letting go of that card.
Anyway.
Really upset.
Yeah. I mean, very quickly.
The rest of the weekend was fun.
Anything else for the last couple of weeks, boys?
Me and Rab have just played some tournaments, right?
Go on. You go first.
I played some Goldengo.
Yes.
At Mystic Games Cup to a second place finish. Basically because, I may have said it on the pod before, but Dengo's been my ladder deck for 2 months when I'm just on my phone, basically, and you want to switch off. And it's a fun deck because you spin the stop and you have a bit of sequencing puzzle going on with how you can thin the deck and whatnot and look at ratios. And it got to play Night Stretcher Pokestop as a combo. I played 3 of each of those cards. And I think people are getting more and more aware of how strong that combination of cards is together. So I got to do a bit of that. I lost to a Drago in finals. It was actually quite a close finals. I somehow won a game 2 with trapping strats and actually 3 manual attachments to a Cruel Arrow Pheasantipity let me set up a checkmate against them in game 2. And then I was on the back foot again in game 3 because I prized 4th Gimmighoul, Manaphy, and Radiant Greninja. So I had 3 of my Gimmighoul down, and I had to choose. My hand was abysmal, right? I just had Basic Energy and Superiors, so I decided to Hisuian for Greninja to try and make a play to just draw 2, and maybe I get Goldengo, and maybe that gets me everything. I hadn't played a support that turn either, so I had a lot of outs to just stay in the game. Obviously, it's just a complete air, and then the 3 Gimmighoul go, and then I'm on the comeback again. I still brought that back down to a Roxanne, with a trapped Drago that I could KO the following turn, but they were able to Nest Ball Fez and then and then find Prime Fire for Radzard to finish me off. But that was a close final. I beat a bunch of Raging Bolts, which was a really good matchup for Goldengo. So I had a pretty fortunate day outside of that. What about you, Rab?
Yeah, I played 2 events. I played one on Saturday and then one this Tuesday, just gone a couple of days ago. I played both with Burnett, so Burnett Desnoir. So the first event I was playing Henry Brand's list. I played it to a top 4 finish.
Nice.
I was pretty happy with it.
Was that a cup? Was that the weekend one?
That was the cup, yeah. So that was the cup. I had one fortunate matchup in Swiss, and the rest of them were pretty close. The fortunate matchup was Chen Pao, which is just a complete cakewalk, really. Especially if you go second and then you flip heads on the envelope.
Envelope shadow.
Enveloping shadow.
Yeah.
So that was pretty good. But some pretty close matchups in that. I was fortunate enough to beat Zard, which I think can be pretty 50-50 if they go first. It's quite literally 50-50 if you can get the Shuppet enveloping shadow off. So that was pretty close. Some unfortunate DPL got me out of that situation, I suppose.
What did you do?
It got you
out.
Hang on, rewind.
It got you out of the
Rewind.
situation.
It was actually Elliot. He took 2 prizes off a Shuppet.
That is unfortunate.
That is sus.
And because, of course, the nature of Dust Noir, you're always, regardless of what you're playing against, you're always going to go down to 2 prize cards. So, yeah, that was quite fortunate. But then in top 8, played Chen Pao again, the same Chen Pao. So, again, pretty happy with that. And then in top 4, it was a really close matchup. I played Lost Box. I missed out Lost Box Zard. I missed out on Item Lock turn 2, both games going. So I won the first game. Yeah. So I was super unfortunate, but managed to crawl it back in the 3rd and final game. But it was purely down to Iono to 1, get out Blood Moon Ursa Luna, and just like hope it sticks out. It was like top deck Roxanne into Hisuian Heavy Ball for Fez for 3, and it's just like my mental health can't take it anymore playing decks in which you're just hoping your opponent doesn't have it. I just can't do it anymore because they just do. Because I've played so much Judge in the past, and it's this similar feeling where your hope. It's this fine line between hope and guarantee in your head. Because in your head you're like, oh, I'll just judge him and it's guaranteed that they won't get anything. But it's obviously not true. And Fez is an even worse feeling. Because,
this is a bad feeling card. Obviously we've abused that card, but it's a bad feeling card for sure.
It's such a good card. I get it, but
goes into everything, right?
It just goes into exactly.
Nice.
It just goes into everything. That's the thing. And then in the League Challenge, I played the top 32 list from Baltimore, and I'll get the name up in a moment.
I can do
It was Tyler Matthews.
Yeah.
So I played their list in the League Challenge.
What were the differences, just for the context? It plays Salvatore, right?
Yeah, so it took out the trekking shoes, which I was pretty afraid of, because I really do like trekking shoes. It's just an added consistency booster, especially if you're obviously wanting to go first in almost every game. So I was pretty wary of that, but it's the high roll version, of course. It's the trying to go turbo with the Luminion into the Salvatore. I got it off a couple of times, which was pretty interesting. People were kind of like, "Does it end your turn?" And I'm like, "No."
This is just allowed, actually.
I'll just do 30 actually, which was good.
In some ways, without shoes, it's like the high roll version, but not having to rely on a 50-50 when you go second also sounds like you're trying to high roll a lot of matchups, right?
Exactly. And I came up against decks like Lost Box and Gardy, which only realistically only need 1 turn of items to really get going if they're fortunate enough. Lost Box, it was the same person playing Lost Box, who eventually won the cup, by the way. Autumn, really good player from Cardiff. Managed to completely steamroll their first turns every single game, just like 5 in the lost zone, 2 crammed down. It's like, okay, well, we'll try this. We'll try and deal with it.
I feel like Lost Box needs items the entire game, but maybe
it's difficult because if I don't, I found that I needed to Dust Noir at least 3 times in the game, and
Right.
if they're fortunate enough to get...
What are you dust noiring? Like, why are you not just, like, trying to do trap stuff?
I'm dust noiring crams, because crams are so difficult to
Yeah,
get
so I get that, but is there not just trapping lines you can do?
There are trapping lines, and then you kind of do the Alakazam. That's how you win, definitely. But if you miss out Dust Noirs and you miss out the item lock anyway, it's obviously very difficult.
Maybe a bit of tempo loss. Yeah.
Yeah, and then especially if you get my point towards 2 cram is that you need to get double Dust Noir out pretty quickly, and then of course losing the prizes. And if they get 2 cram off on your Banette, it's pretty difficult. And then of course, if
I've not played enough of Banette Dust Noir at all to know anything really.
But I'll never play it again. But it was fun. It was fun.
That's what Henry's saying.
It's a deck that I just couldn't put down after Worlds. As soon as I saw it, I was like dummy handing it, and dummy handing it is unironically the best way to test it. So.
Because you don't care what you're playing up against. You
exactly.
Need to do what you need to do.
It's all sequence in my eyes. But back to Lax, I think. But yeah, all good. That was my tournament report.
Only Ravi's the type of guy to take over this pod and give us an actual breakdown of his 2 tournaments.
I love
it, isn't it?
I love it.
Jeez. Yeah. I didn't play any Pokemon, guys. I went to a stag, but just before the stag, the night before, I decided to bust my lip at the gym.
You're such a lad.
I was in A&E for 5 hours waiting for
How did you do it? Did you fall? Did something fall on you? What was it?
I mean, I was attacked by a barbell. It was rough.
What does a barbell look like?
Couldn't handle it.
I basically smashed
you went
the
for
barbell.
one more rep and you just couldn't.
Pretty much, yeah, with a bit too much weight than I needed to try to, and then I hit it against my chin. My teeth went straight into the lip. So you may see me. If you do see me this weekend, I'm gonna end up like just biting my lip the whole time.
Yeah.
Ouch.
But yeah, no Pokemon. Kept an eye on Baltimore, of course. But yeah, let's actually start this off. This will be like 10 minutes in now. Thanks, Benjamin.
Sorry.
Welcome everyone to the SpilltheTeaCG podcast with yourself, Alex. Yours truly, Alex. Now, alongside my fellow co-casters, of course, Joe Bernard and Benjamin Rabaiotti as well. Like I said, it's been a hot moment. A couple of weeks since our last pod. Some big tournaments has just happened this past weekend, of course, as well, and was in our Worlds format. So Baltimore Regionals just happened across the pond. Really quite an interesting tournament because we only had Worlds as our sort of precursor going into this. Lots of online tournaments, of course, but lots was still trying to be deciphered, I think, in this format, wasn't it?
No doubt. Yeah, it's tough to figure. It's tough to figure out, like, when Worlds was so bizarre itself. With Ironthorns winning, there was still that undercurrent of Regidrago doing well. But then this will be the first and only tournament for a lot of people in this format, right? So. There's more stuff that you may not have expected to see doing well at the top tables, and a lot of interesting metagaming going on in the weeks ahead. We already talked about like Ancient Box's upheaval and how the turbo decks were going to function, this, that, and the other, where Charizard sat in all this. Those were all questions going into this one.
Yeah, I was pretty interested after Worlds, of course. The conversation that we had in the last pod was whether people were going to stick narrow-minded into the decks that they know are successful in quite a large tournament like Worlds, of course. But it was nice to see that there was some differentiation, a couple of new decks, new archetypes popping up. Of course,
we're getting some ASMR, Rab.
Well, sorry, I'm shuffling. Sorry, I'll just.
This is an audio podcast.
Not even Ogopon and Palkia Dust Noir. I think were the kind of crowd favourites going into the tournament. In terms of new kind of wild takes on the format.
Well, we have the day one top decks, right?
I'm showing it now. The
what was it? It was
the top.
It was something like over 30% for a Teal Mask deck, I believe it looked like, right? Or both Regidrago were 17% or so, and Bolt was also second, I think. 15. Did it go over 15%?
Bolt was 15%.
Lugia. Sorry, I'm looking at day two statistics. Sorry.
Cheers, Ben.
Well, Regidrago was 17% day one. Charizard and Bolt were definitely up there. I can't remember which was higher than the other. I think Charizard was higher than Bolt. I think Charizard was also, or might be misremembering, but yeah, like around that 15% and 13% for those. I think I can't remember.
I do remember someone in one of our chats calling out that Unclassified was on the day one meta breakdown, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it might have been propping everything else up.
I don't think that should really be on the graphic, to be honest, because it's a combination of lots of different decks, and I think it is a better representation to show a deck on there. So they should shimmy stuff down, really. But I think, Lugia was on there still. Gardevoir notably was like off the chart. I think it was only like 4% or something or less in the day one field. And it took a very different list that we'll get to in a moment to actually break through the crowd. And yeah, so Miraidon also wasn't all that popular. Thorns wasn't all that popular. I think, did Snorlax make the day one, like six, the first six? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I've just found it. I don't know what happened with Ben bringing it up, but Regidrago 17.22%, Raging Bolt at just over 15%, Charizard 14%.
Oh, there you go.
Ancient Box 9.35.
Oh, that's right. Ancient Box was
Lugia at 6.79, and Unclassified at the same percentage as Lugia. But as you mentioned, it's like an amalgamation of decks, considering they're just not captured maybe correctly because some of the counts are a little bit different. I think a lot of this data is captured via RK9, isn't it?
The biggest surprise statistics wise was the kind of drop off of Raging Bolt going into day two. It just disappeared. It just got completely decimated, and then ended up only being pretty much a 7% meta share going into day two. So it completely just got wiped off the board from, one of the top represented decks to just, pretty much just being fed on by Regidragos and Charizards, right?
I don't think Dragos are. Well, I do think some of the Dragos adapted, right? Some of the Dragos were playing Jamming Tower, which I do think makes a big difference. So they were prepared, I suppose. But I can't really explain the drop-off too much. I guess there just weren't other aggressive decks to eat, basically. Like, people knew that Bolt was the aggressive deck, so there was less Miraidon. There was still a bit of Turbo Moon, but yeah, it looked looked less appealing, really.
It's Ancient Box as well, right? So Ancient Box was obviously one of the...
Ancient Box eats it.
Yeah.
Zard's not good for it.
And Snorlax Stall is not fantastic either. So
never forget.
True enough.
As it slowly gets into kind of the top.
It made
you can see why.
Yeah, I mean, Snorlax matters in day two. It didn't really matter in day one, like for the overall field, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are plenty of opposition for Raging Bolt throughout both days, really. To see.
So no real surprises at that stage, right? From day one. I mean, Rahul was the player who was XO, right, with Lugia in the end.
Yeah.
Following his impressive performance from NAIC as well, not NAIC Worlds as well.
I feel like everyone slagged off his list and he just came back and reran it. Like everyone saw the 1/1 Chinchino and went, I'm definitely playing more of those. But Rahul just stuck with it.
His breakdown of his tournament is really interesting. He just seems so confident in the list, and well, why not, right? He had a really great run of Worlds, and then obviously in Baltimore, just like you said, just ran it back and just showing everybody, 1/1 Chinchino's enough somehow.
Apparently so.
Yeah. I've got.
Sorry.
I've got day two statistics here just in front of me. So Regidrago top with 17%, Lugia with 14%. Then it goes into the 10%ers, which is 13 decks each. Snorlax, Ancient Box, and Charizard. So those are the top five lists going into day two.
It's not too bad then. Ancient Box had a decent day then, right? For how popular it was.
How many players actually made it into day two? Did it say on that graphic as well, Ben, right?
It was 129.
Okay. I guess we're going to touch on a little bit more of the structure going forward later in a moment as well. Yeah. But back on day two, I guess, again, no real surprises based on what we were already seeing of the field. we could just go straight into the top 8 decks, because that's where it gets really interesting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, for
Definitely.
sure.
I say not even top 8. What about even the asymmetrical bracket?
I believe there was
Has
10
each.
decks, so I believe Grafton and Jeremy were also in the ASIM, right?
That's right. So first place, well, I'll start off 10th place actually. Jeremy Gibson with Snorlax Pidgeot Control. I say Snorlax Pidgeot Control because I think his list had 3 Snorlax, so I think that's
And 3 Mimikyu, yeah, so it actually is a
Mimikyu,
combo.
so it's-
And only one
It's a bit of
Pidgey.
a combination. Yeah, and then it was Grafton Roll with the Palkia Dusknoir. Ian Robb 8th place with Red Drago, Rowan.
These are
Starman
final standings, right?
with
I think.
Red
Yeah,
Drago.
these are
That's
the
correct.
final standings.
Nolan Randall with the Ogapon Leuven, Rahul and Stephen Varesco with Lugia in 5th and 4th place. Then Roaring Moon with Emmett Hurley. Then second, of course, Kieran Farah with Lugia, and then Henry with the Gardevoir, of course, taking on the dub.
Turbo Guardy. Secret Guardy.
Yes. I can bring up the graphic of the. I don't know if you both have the kind of deck diff analyzer on Trainer Hill now.
Well, show the people.
But yeah, I know both of you wanted to just have a look at the deck differentiation between his Baltimore list and his list at NAIC.
Yeah, I mean, I think just it. I mean, if you look at his Limitless page, I think it's 4 finishes with Gardevoir, and of course he had that incredible run at NAIC with his version of Guardy, which everyone was still trying to work out which A-spec was best to play in the deck, and just how best to build it. And obviously he had that kind of double monkey, right? I think in that original list with Hyper Aroma, so it felt like quite aggro and quite a slow field. I think that's how he kind of explained it in one of his interviews as well, in terms of just how he saw the meta adapting. So it was just and I think that's actually quite interesting to watch back and listen through to his thought processes on it. And that's why I kind of wanted to show this kind of difference, actually, because it's wildly different.
Yeah. Well, in the more recent interviews in Baltimore, he was sort of talking through the rare candies in the secret box and stuff, and we even saw in the finals itself, right? We saw a turn 2 Guardy, Candy, KO on a Luminion, which is unfortunate for Kieran, obviously, but it shows you that could have been any V or basic EX, right? Because you can still get Monkey Dory weaved in the ultimate high roll situation. But having 2 copies of Rare Candy and Secret Box gives you a lot of reach to actually find that low count, even with, like reduced Arven count. And the Secret Box also just gives you good access to lots of your other pieces here and there as well. It's a really cool concept, to be honest with you, just that Guardy is big in some matchups, and that's trouble. So if you come out a turn early is good. Having a fallback to whiffing Evo and just having license to go first into some matchups is nice. That was another reason why he liked Hyper Aroma, right? It gave him license to go first into a number of matchups. So it's a similar concept, but just going for a box approach instead, which gives you more like Psych Energy discard as well, which is pretty huge. So yeah, he's definitely like a Gardevoir master. And in a weekend when everyone was disrespecting Guardy, and rightfully so, because it really dropped off for the masses, he found like the way to adapt the archetype and still make it really competitive. It's not the first time I've seen researching Guardy, but
right?
Yeah, I think he
unbeaten
was.
for the whole tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the first time we saw researching Guardy, but it seems like he's got the balance just like so right with this list, to be honest.
Yeah, I absolutely love the list. I love Pheasantipity as well in this.
If I was going to go to
so much.
If I was going to go to a tournament, I would have immediately just picked this up just to play it, because I think I've tried Fez in Guardy before, but I just kind of, I mean, like everyone else, as much as we've always wanted a rare candy to go into Guardy, we always kind of pushed it away because we always thought it wasn't quite enough because of how quick certain decks are nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's also a response to Miraidon, right? Having candies in your deck, and Lugia as well to an extent, right? So that you can actually make a guy into them and hope, because Evo's not enough against just Iron Hands, right? A lot of the time.
Yeah,
you have to have a lot of pieces going right for you when you're getting hands.
It's certainly it's certainly a more turbo aspect, which I think, when he won and he posted the deck list, he did say Turbo Gardevoir, which I think this is the most turbo you can you'll probably see on the kind of top rankings of Gardevoir lists. I absolutely love the list. I love Secret Box. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Get those early researchers in. get those Ionos in, or maybe even the Arvins for the Technical Machine Evolution. High counts of Bravery Charm. Really.
That's the one card
really...
that sticks out to me. I think you can definitely cut a Charm from the list, but
no,
it's just a statement, right? You would disagree? I mean, the fact that it's 3 is definitely a statement, right? Because there's been lists with 0 or 1 very frequently. I've really enjoyed playing 2, and I feel like that's really good. But especially when you're playing 2 Arvin, so in theory you have it less, but bots can also find it. And I guess you're researching, but you can also very proactively pop in for Drifloon just to stash that tool, right? And there are situations where even braverying up Monkey Dory is really important in other situations. So yeah, I feel like 2 is probably my sweet spot, but
I think it's just because of the additional discard elements in his deck, right? I mean, the 3 vessel secret box to research, you're most often going to be. I mean, it's
possibly like I said,
it's be discarding 1.
I don't think you actually do because, like I said, you can just pop in Drifloon and spend it early and then research.
Look at Joe trashing our.
I think that's the only card that I don't like about the list. I really like the list. I probably want to go back to 2 Dark Energy personally, or put 1 Artisan back in the deck to make your rods better. But
Joe, you're not wrong, all right? You're not wrong, but.
I'm not saying Henry's wrong either. I'm just saying that's the one card that I question.
There's just optimal according to Joe. But yeah, anyway. But yeah, incredible list. Our first auto, well, other than the world's winners and top 4s, our first auto invitee to Anaheim next season. Not next season, end of this season, sorry. For Worlds. So that's kind of an incredible feat to have already. Wonder if some people, once they win a tournament like this, spike an event like this, do they continue playing?
Well, we've been through this before, right? I mean, you get 4 finishes at League Cups. Do you even bother? I think you do. I tried to get a lot of people's aspects on this.
There's a difference between going to big tournaments and small tournaments. Henry can very much not go to cups now, right? But I feel like he will go to majors that are near him just because he seems like a competitor that is enjoying the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, even players who finishing in the top 4 spots where they're getting a lot of points, right? I think it's 300 or so for top 4 and or something like that. I think someone in our, as we know as a caster in the Go community, got 300 points for finishing top 4 in Baltimore as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah, there are a lot of points now being handed out for that. So
yeah,
it's just spiking yourself to still maybe get the stipends and things if they're still coming along. You don't know. I don't know if they've actually been announced or anything like that yet. But lots of opportunities there, so we'll see. But interesting for both of you, I guess, that other than Worlds, we've seen this tournament structure finally come to fruition in an even bigger field now, of course, at Baltimore. The whole, is it 8 rounds? 8, you've got to go to 8 rounds.
They had 9 day 1, right?
9 rounds day 1, and then into the
one,
shorter day 2, because then they have to factor in the asymmetric cut.
Yeah.
A lot less ties, which is something that our good old friend Benji Pham had highlighted as well. It was only 11% as a tie rate at Baltimore. Any thoughts on that? Kind of, there's now a lot of gentlemen's agreements. I think there's been a whole furore on the old Twitterverse around it at the moment. Just interested to get your thoughts on it, boys.
I hate that players are forced to take matters into their own hands and make it a gentleman's agreement situation. I don't like that it's a thing, even though I think everyone logically will agree with it. And I think you hear the odd horror story, but on the whole, I think the majority of people will adhere to a gentleman's and come to an agreement. But I just don't like that it's down to players. I want the tournament to tell me who's won and lost, and let that be that. But I think ties aren't just like the devil. So if you want to play a deck that can tie, I think you can still play it. And we saw that the meta breakdown still shows that you can play some, slower decks. Like Charizard can play certainly slow game plans, right, and be awkward in game 3 situations if time's running out because it gets good in the late game. But yeah, I want the system to... I don't know. I want changes in the system. I don't want it to be a gentleman's agreement fest.
How would you suggest the changes be? Would it be whoever's held on prizes, and that's just the board.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the easiest way that you still don't hold up the tournament and you're just carrying on. Obviously, there's going to be the backlash of like you can't play control decks or no prize taking decks or whatever, which is the only problem. But I think
Just
that's
throw
a
a
small
dagger to
enough
Ben's
percentage
heart.
that it's acceptable. I think it's a small enough percentage that it's acceptable.
You
To
call
me,
them a small
person-
percentage as well. That's outrageous.
of the overall player base. I think those who love playing those decks is a small percentage. Yeah, I mean, there are other things you can do with time and whatnot that's much more drastic, but I also think is unrealistic, so I don't think it's that relevant to talk about on the pod.
Ben, yourself?
I like the idea of less ties. Ties have always had a negative connotation in competitive Pokemon, at least. I think a lot of people still have the idea that a tie is worse than a loss in most aspects. Because unless there's a win, it doesn't.
Who's ever told you that?
Oh, loads of people. A
A tie is worse than a loss.
No. But you know what I mean.
That's
like,
what you just said.
In some aspects,
Bro.
a tie is still worse than a loss. Because like you still need.
Bro.
You still...
Let me tell you about points in a tournament structure. You get 3 for a win. You get
Yes.
1 for a tie.
1 for a tie.
You get 0 for a loss.
Yes, I know. But,
So in many ways, a tie is better.
but if you get 2 ties and a loss,
Yes.
then you still have to win. You still have to win out, right?
But you can't.
True. But you can be higher
You
on
have-
standings no matter what, right? than taking 2 losses, bro.
I think
I don't
people
know
would
what
agree.
you're arguing. I mean-
I think people would agree with me. I think it's some.
You said the phrase that ties are worse than losses. I don't think people will agree with you.
Isn't it
think
isn't it
people would
X2
agree with
now
me.
as well for day 2?
It is X2.
Yeah.
You can't even. Yeah, so that scenario of 2 losses and a tie. Well, obviously previous years, but even nowadays,
It is.
That's not
yeah,
a thing.
It's just as bad as a loss in some respects.
Yeah, but you can still get points, right? Even if you don't make day 2. So a point's
You
a
can.
point. You're never
Sure,
gonna slag off a
I-
point.
I think my aspect here is on making day 2. I'm not thinking about top finishes and top like 2, 5, 6.
I mean, that's
or
fine.
Top 1 to 8. I think my viewpoint is from somebody who's trying to make day 2.
My
I guess it's the question on whether
ties are always terrible in that.
because like
in
what
that
one
respect.
tie is fine, right?
One tie is
as soon
fine.
As you have,
That's
as soon
my
as you have
problem.
one tie, it's gentleman's agreement is across the rest of the board. It's
One
Sure.
tie is fine, and then when you go into those certain situations where you're on a winning in for the next 3 rounds, a tie does absolutely nothing for you. So a tie.
well, it's still gonna
means-
give you it's still a point, bro.
It's still a point.
it still
It's
pushes you up. To
It
be
still
fair.
pushes you up, but by 1 point when you need
Yes.
2 more.
So arguing that it's better than a loss is terrible. I'm not trying to tell people not to do gentlemen's agreements either. I think the overall EV is that you gents and then there's an outcome, right?
Okay,
So I agree with you on that.
Have we all been on the side of a gentleman's agreement that we've given our opponents
Yeah.
to win?
Yeah, of
I
course,
certainly
yeah.
have at Worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
me too.
In a winning in at Worlds before day 2 once.
Feels
So-
good. Feels really good. The one thing I will say on the ASIM structure is that it stops people not playing the final round oftentimes in Swiss, which I think is really good. And it means that the people who are doing the best in the tournament actually make cut, rather than those people who have those like late sweeps, which can still happen, but are way less, right? Because they only have 4 rounds to make that comeback sweep. So it is those people who have that 1 loss or no losses in the tournament that actually end up making that ASIM cut. So from that perspective, it does feel good. And also in day 2 situations when there were like 6 rounds of Swiss, you see a bunch of IDs anyway, because people's tournaments are done and they don't care anymore and they just want to go and do other stuff, but they're stuck for 2 hours just so they can wait to get their prizing. So they have tried to, I think they truly have tried to target that like downtime of maybe the last hour of the day and the last hour of Swiss that can cut out for a large portion of people who don't care about, certainly in that day 2, right? If you're not in contention for money or cuts, you don't really want to be there. You just want to, you're done. So you can just be done after 4 rounds, which is better. And you're only hyper-focused on the top end of the tournament in this structure, which I think is the main positive.
I think just going back to it though, I think it's like I said, it's great to see that there are less ties happening and the tie rate is down.
But that's because of gents, right? It's it's fake data. It's fake news.
Naturally, with that, you will get more of a messy situation with these gentlemen's agreements, right? And
I don't think we heard any. Were there any horror stories from Baltimore? I think everyone was more or less.
Not
maybe
really.
there'll be grumbles and mumbles from people.
The majority of stories,
I think I've seen one. I've seen one tweet which was someone had said that.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have had time, but someone just chose to slow play a little bit and take the time.
I did see a couple of stories of people, and this was one of these people was actually Tubbs. Talking about people who are asking for gentlemen's agreements and pressurizing, which I think is one of those other negative situations which will come out of this.
I agree for sure.
New tournament structure, which will cause messy situations. We've all heard horror stories of gentlemen's agreements and getting messy. Then it gets to I can't decide a winner. Oh, you're on 4 prizes. I'm on 4 prizes.
It's also just a beginner experience thing that's stressful, right?
Yeah.
There's a newer player who's in a stressful situation, hasn't really been welcomed into this structure or hasn't been in that situation before, and then there's someone who you're up against and you've just sat there with them for an hour or whatever, and they're saying a lot of people would do this in this situation. And I'm ahead. You can see I'm ahead, right? And having that lean is just not a nice conversation. It could ruin. It could stop someone coming back. Of course it is.
Kind of terminology.
Of course it is. But that probably was happening right over the weekend.
100%.
So
it's stressful.
That's
for
what's
everyone.
bad.
It's stressful for everyone, regardless. But it definitely has that aspect to it. If you were more of a newer player, and having this kind of experience going into a competitive situation of did you know players do gentlemen's agreements and all that kind of thing, and that's another messy situation that people can get in for sure. But it's the pressure I don't like. Of
course it is.
It's the expectation of you can. I know as a player who's gone to many tournaments for many years, worlds competitor, whatever, is that going into those last final rounds, if you're in it, you already know whether a game is going to be a gentleman's agreement situation. You already know that, but.
Well, just as a PSA out there to people, I think if you're going to have that conversation, have it at the start of the round. It's always the best policy.
100%.
One question. Don't mention it again. Just the one question. It's a yes or no. I mean, to be honest, I also don't like people saying, let's think about it later. Yeah. I think it kind of needs... Because your mindset in terms of how people play just changes, right? The classic one is what you play in. It's like, do you want an ID? What are you playing?
That's Ben to a T. What are you playing?
Well, it's usually people scared of me when I ask for ID.
Rabbit is like, no, I don't think I will. Still likes it? Yeah.
It's alright. I think
I mean, yeah. I'm just on that. Just on one last thing on gentlemen's. We obviously voiced our displeasure over how we have to go about it, or potentially how players have to go about it, especially in such a large field now with potentially new players and so on. Does it? I don't know if this changes your minds on it, but for those where we have heard horror stories, would you want to know those people, like that list of people? Because there's a lot of people who hide away the names for certain reasons, because it's not nice to necessarily out people. Maybe it's it was the first tournament, it was a bit awkward, and they didn't really know what was going on.
Are you making a boo?
Would you want to know? Would you want to know a list?
I don't know. Because it's so he said, she said. It's I don't think you can really just put someone on a list. Because something happening in round 7. But there could have been a conversation going on for the whole tournament, and their opponent wasn't particularly nice for them throughout the entire game, or this, that, and the other, and then they just felt like they didn't feel obligated to, which is completely fair as well. So I don't think there should be. I don't think there should be this.
Look,
these are untrusted people or whatever, right? I don't think. We just have to accept that the community isn't going to do that.
Dave, that's so bad, actually.
It's sad that it's going to be self-regulating, but I think that's better than trying to...
I'm only joking.
I'm just being a voice of... Some people have said this before, people would want to know if... there's certain players out there who have been suspect of, let's say... Well,
there's been those posts at Old Worlds tournaments,
worried about that.
At Worlds, where there's been these, gentlemen's things, you get the, don't ever try and do this with @ whoever, because he didn't do that to me. That's happened before on Twitter, and if you're cheesed off about it, whatever. But I don't think there should be this whole witch hunt about you should have scooped.
The one thing I would say as well, just to get that off topic of
off
that
your
as
chest,
well, is that I hope gentlemen's agreements don't actually are not actually happening around round 3, which was a story.
Why
that was
not?
also reported
Yeah, why not?
What's wrong with that?
If
round 3?
if
What do you
you're
mean?
if you're 0-2, of course.
Well, if you think ties are not as bad as losses, then why are you doing a gentlemen's agreement at round 3?
But that's at that point, right? You're literally out of the tournament then. If you get a tie, you can still get points.
It's a question of maths, Rab. It's a math.
Oh, I don't know.
Top one.
What? I don't mind
20,
asking for a
24.
gents agreement in round 1, bro.
Yeah, I mean that was the main idea around
round
going
1.
into
I'm
worlds,
shuffling
right?
up. I'm saying, do you want to put a gentleman's on if the game doesn't conclude naturally on prize cards? I don't mind having that sentence on round 1 before I've flipped over a card.
What are you playing?
Yeah, I've become more accustomed to either hearing or offering it. If they don't want to, they don't want to. It doesn't really matter. It's still round 1.
Yeah,
So.
it is what it is.
I don't know.
If I tie, I tie.
Feels weird.
It's how Worlds has been for maybe the last couple.
That's the
especially, I
thing.
think.
Maybe I'm more used to it because we've been through Worlds, and from round 1 at Worlds, I've been having that conversation with people for years now.
Yeah. I guess.
Right. Let's move on away from this. Obviously, it's still early days with this tournament structure. We're going to see loads more opinions on it, loads more stories, good and bad, probably. So we'll touch on that as we get along. Well, very quickly on that asymmetrical, I echoed Joe's point that I think is a really good system to allow people to have that opportunity to make it into the cut as well, and gives a better position for those who actually do go EXO. I mean, Joe, you've been in that position before. I mean, it's that would have been an auto into
That's
top 8,
the dream.
like Rahul done, right?
Yep.
Rather than have to still fight it out for top 16. I think the only other thing that came out of Baltimore was because everyone's going through this maybe less ties scenario and sort of more trying to get into the cuts. I think there was people who are doing super well, maybe lost a few rounds on the bounce and ended up very quickly not cashing at top 32, I think.
Yep.
And I think that was the only other thing, which
there are still winning in people who are whiffing
Think
cash altogether.
there's still improvements to be made, maybe
I think
on the system.
the easy solution for that is pricing based on points rather than based on a placement. That's the easy solution. They've already done it for Top Cut, right? Because they're introducing ASIM, which is saying you get the amount of points, we're going to reward you, or at least have the opportunity to reward you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So doing it with placements in tournaments as well. I imagine it's just out of ease that they're not doing it, because it'll take a few of these tournaments at these sizes to figure out the thresholds for points, to figure out their budget. Whereas budgeting wise, if you just have a hard cut, they know exactly how much every tournament's going to cost them.
Yeah.
Sure. Right. Well, that was it. That's it from Baltimore, I think. We don't need to cover it too much. We've been on it for quite a while now. Over onto some more fun news. I think over this period, whilst we haven't had the pods, I think what's essentially our full EU schedule has now been announced because Bologna popped up on the website. And this was as I was sending the full list of tournaments to Oliver Fenley as well. I was like,
Nice.
which one do you want to go to? Oh, look, we're going back to Birmingham.
That's great. Lure him in.
And then literally an hour later, Bologna dropped. So, looking forward to that. I mean, Joe, you did that event just before NAIC in the last season.
Yeah.
So how was that as an event? How was that as a location?
Very good venue. Lots of space. It's a great time of year to be in Italy.
For you
happy.
or for everyone?
Not for me, but for other people, obviously.
Why not for you?
Plenty of shade for me, so that was fine. Very happy that it's back there. I think it's got the room for a much bigger tournament than there was this year, which is good.
Yeah, I think there were rumours of other Italian cities, and obviously the year before we had a couple of mishaps with the actual event space when we were there.
The one toilet.
The power just shutting down.
Power shut
multiple
down.
times.
That's a
That
classic.
was a bit unfortunate.
I thought I was hallucinating that regional because I had COVID and I had it on in the corner during COVID, and the stream kept stopping and stuttering, and I was just like, is this am I?
The stream or my brain?
What's going on? Because it kept cutting in and out. And I was like, what's happening?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to go. I do love Italy. It's on my weekend, as they always seem to be, the Italian events, which is always good fun. So that's our, I think, 9 events in total for the season now. The US doesn't look like there's 9, or at least 9, compared to what they've had for previous years. I think they all haven't been fully announced yet. So there's still a lot more to look forward to. I know Ben might currently have the upcoming tournaments on the screen right now.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of things to look forward to. Yeah, I mean, before we even touch on what's actually coming up next, the most important tournament for us is in sort of 9 days' time. Dortmund.
That's come up quick.
Stella
That's
Crown.
snuck up real quick, hasn't it?
Impact of Stella Crown, boys. We've spoken about the kind of cards that are going to be making an impact. Joe, you've got your multiple buy lists out. Gameplays are coming out the wazoo right now. How are we feeling? What's looking good? What's first impressions of decks at the moment? Benjamin, you've had a wonderful tweet that went out.
I absolutely love this set. There are so many decks that I thought I would try out, and it would just be like a couple of tries and then just give up. Because I did that with Great Tusk. I was like really, really looking forward to Great Tusk Mill, and then it just kind of like, this is...
Did you ever play that?
This is pretty mid. I played it... No, I never took it to a tournament. I was thinking about taking it to... I think it was EUIC, but then ended up working it. But yeah, no. All the decks that I've tried out thus far from Stella Crown, I've really actually enjoyed. Terapagos actually being a real highlight for me. I didn't think that deck would. I didn't actually have much faith in the deck when I first got my hands on kind of the DT list with Survival Brace that you've been playing, Joe. I thought, let's see how it goes. And like by turn 5, you can just do whatever you want. It feels like one of those decks which have your drafting cube, where you draft every draw support and every draw Pokemon, and then by like turn 5, you're like, what am I drawing into? Like, what do I actually want here? And then just getting it every single time. You got your barrels down, you got your Buffalards down, your Squover, your Noctowls. You can just do whatever you want by like turn 3 or 4, which is quite fun. And then of course like the fringe, the fun decks. I've been enjoying Comfey at the moment. Just a couple of variations of that, of course.
Remind us what it does, Ben.
So you and your opponent draw 3 cards, and then you just play variations of, annoying supporters that affect the hand. But I've been trying it out with Chandelier at the moment, which is both players draw a card, which is quite funny, and then Great Tree, and then all that kind of malarkey.
Great Tree Chandelier, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So you just hope that they don't have a stadium out by turn 2 when you put it down.
Benjamin, you tweeted a list today.
I did, yeah. It was actually 59 cards.
It's a perfect 59.
Perfect 59.
I forgot to put a mana fee in it, and then nobody's questioned it thus far, so that's fine. No, I've really been enjoying this set. I'm pretty confident that Terapagos will not have as an unfortunate start as it has in Japan, because looking at a lot of lists, a lot of results in Japan, Terapagos hasn't made that much of an impact. But I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident that the West will find a way to play it, either with DT or even Palkia, which I know you're a fan of, Joe, as well.
Well, Joe's got a wonderful graphic in terms of how the Japanese results have been doing recently. I mean, he has tweeted it out. But Joe, you can give us a bit of a rundown for all that hard work you did pulling that data together.
What do you want to look at? Do you want to look at Japan, or do you want to look at our online results so far? What are you going to pull up, Brab?
Actually, yeah, I'll pull up the online results. That'll probably be better.
The Play Limitless ones. Yeah, just for very quick context, in Japan, Terapagos is like D tier down there with like Great Tusk and Dialga V-Star. And Palkia's like just about in their top 10 of decks, and it's much more popular, or has been much more popular in our online spaces. But Palkia's also not done great in online tournaments just yet either. It is very combo-y. There's a lot that you want to have in that deck, because you want to have early ball search for Palkia and Greninja if you've gone first, definitely. And on turn 2, you also want a Terra Pokemon on the board as well, so that you can pop off with Noctowls. But when you have that, it can be incredibly Exodia. You're getting 4-star berths, well, 2-star berths for 4 cards, and you can do some silly things. You have high damage output ramp. I've been trying it with Trumpet and Iron Leaves, so I have an easier Charizard check, essentially, because Charizard is very popular online right now, rightfully so, because it has taken away a lot of the game's interaction. It's quite unfortunate to say, but Charizard can win into attacks, and it realistically looks to make that happen in a lot of situations. Doesn't matter if the opponent's down on 2 prizes or 3 prizes, you can force that Briar, either by playing it pre or post Clops, and you can attack, and that's when Charizard's hitting silly numbers. So it's no longer really like an Iono, Radzard, and Prey angle. It's oftentimes a, well, you couldn't deal with this board, so here's my Dusclops and here's Briar, and that's game.
What we call checkmate boards, right?
It is a checkmate style list these days. That's what it's trying to do, at least. It can still fall flat, and it is still a little bit weak to some of the sniping decks. Like Palkia is actually, I think, okay into it if you play a Grass guy as well. Bolt was really popular in Japan. It's not doing well. It's doing okay as well. It's still quite popular. It's kind of just holding out. That's
touching on like an OG Raging Bolt list, right? It doesn't really. It's not the ones where you're including the.
So I haven't seen much Noctowl. So it was one of the very first things me and Jack built for our in-paper testing, and we enjoyed it. We liked Area Zero. We liked Rotom being a great upgrade to Sandy Shocks as an early 1-prize pressure guy. And Noctowl gives you some guarantees, so you can actually do some big combos, which is still relevant in Bolt, I think, at times. So maybe it's unexplored, maybe it's just not as good as getting an attack turn 1, the highest percentage possible, and maybe you need the space for 3 or 4 catches in the deck. Like, I do think that's a big part of its win percentage, so it's one of those things I still need to figure out.
Yeah, I think it's just, and throwing in more of that jargon in, just like all of those aggro decks, and just being more aggro than you waiting for the Noctowl to really burst a turn.
Steal the tempo as much as you can on turn 1 and just commit all your cards aggressively. I mean, I don't mind it. It makes sense. Rather than holding some value for turn 2 that Noctowl can do.
Cheers, Joe. I mean, like I said, you've got some really cool graphics and tweets that you've put out around your data, so it's always good to get that summarized somewhere and have that shared.
I decided to add play rate this time as well, which I think is nice data to look at. I mean, it's just taken from Limitless, obviously.
Sure.
But I think that gives even more context because rightfully so, people have commented on previous ones like this where they've wanted to know how popular these decks are. Like Charizard is the most winningest deck, but also by far the most popular deck as well. So like having that extra context. How much more of a percentage is Charizard? It's actually not crazy. It's like, well, I don't know. So the count is that there's been 20 more Charizard decks played than Dragapult decks as the second most played deck in these tournaments so far. But already someone replied to my tweet with like calculation of like points divided by play rates, basically to give more context, which was exactly what I wanted to have with my graphic now having play rate on there. So providing as much context as possible is useful, I think.
Bringing the community together to just have better data to look at in terms of analysing results.
Well,
you know,
I do try.
Love the data.
Metagaming nowadays. I mean, you basically touched on it. I was just going to ask both of you what your thoughts on the best new deck archetype and best old deck archetype going into something like Dortmund, if it was this weekend, for example. Joe, you kind of heavily backed Charizard because it's just, I mean, performing and it's just in a really good spot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for an old deck, I would still back Drago, I think, actually. I think it loses nothing, and I think it still can play around Briar, which is important. So I think Drago is very underplayed. It's the 9th most played deck after being the unanimous Bediff in the previous format, I think. So I'm very surprised by its fall off, especially because it can fight into Charizard very capably, I think. So that would be my pick as existing deck. For new deck, I am really interested in Palkia. That's probably where it's definitely where most of my testing is going to go the next 2 weeks with Drago as a fallback now, because I'm a bit panicked that you can have good and bad starts with Palkia. But I said as soon as the set came out that I really wanted to play Fan Rotom and Noctowl. Yeah. They're like some of my favourite cards. So I might, even if I don't like my list, still pull the trigger on Palkia because I just want to play with those cards.
Yeah.
I think if anyone's not seen your stream that you do every time a new set drops, I think you spend a lot of time on Palkia on the first day, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted to play Turtle and then I said, forget it, let's play Palkia.
You still play Turtle in it, it was fine. Ben, over to you. I mean, we're going to highlight very quickly that in one of the late nights recently was double Snorlax final.
Yeah.
So would you back it? Will you stand on that? Will you die on that hill?
Yeah, I've got the Limitless stats in front of me now. So Zard is top share, but it's also top share at 52% or 53% win rate, which I really respect. Zard, I still think where it fits in Stella Crown and how it plays. Joe, you touched on Briar. I think it actually makes a big impact to Zard. I think if somebody can crack the code with Briar...
so you're not going Snorlax, Ben?
No.
This is him wanting to go Snorlax because he wants to play Charizard.
I do think Lax
the cogs
is great.
are spinning, trying to how to get back.
I do think Lax is great because Lax is always good in an untested meta. Lax is always good, and it does have a very high win percentage at the moment on Play Limitless, 57%, which is also very respectable.
Yeah, definitely.
Snorlax doesn't really gain as much, but it gains from the fact, like I said, I think people are still figuring out what to play, and when people forget, when new threats come into the format, they always forget about adding extra switches in the deck, which is always something that I'll take as somebody who plays it. So, yeah, Snorlax is still is strong again, but I can't. It's between Zard and Regidrago for me as existing archetypes. But I'm pretty confident Zard would probably be my number one.
Best new archetype then?
Best new archetype. I would go something Noctowl Fan Rotom.
Crazy.
Something with them. Something with
the
regardless of what it is.
The colourless package. I was gonna say White Boys package, but
I'm just gonna say Terrapagos. Just because it's the only deck that I've really had any sort of experience with. And
it's actually very similar to Zard in that it's trying to achieve a similar goal with that Briar, right?
And when you play a Briar and you successfully get your game plan off, it feels incredible. So I feel I would shout out to anybody trying to test Terrapagos or any sort of Terrasilize, put a Briar in and see what happens. Really, because you can get some nutty plays off, and I think that's why Zard's so dangerous, right? If you still have that Pidgeot package, you can just pick and choose when you want to do it more effectively than most other decks, and plus you already play that kind of Pal Pad package as an existing way of dealing with things and couple it up with Dusknoir. I mean, I'll go off on a tangent, but I think, with these Terrasilize cards, I mean, we touched upon it last week. I think there's a lot more to come. In terms of shenanigans in deck lists, put it that way.
And that's why you only give us the crumb of Rotom something.
Noctowl something.
Rotom is coming, look busy.
It's like our caster predictions we sometimes have to do at tournaments, and you've just basically gone like nest ball.
I'm seeing nest ball.
I remember when Prime Catcher came out, and I've forgotten what tournament it was. It was the first one in which it was released, and 3 people just put Prime Catcher. It was just like, oh, okay. Sure. I mean,
I'm keeping my eye on Prime Catcher, actually.
Just to give you my quick thoughts. I mean, I thought you were going to go Charizard, Joe, so I was just going to go with Drago.
Is everyone backing Drago? That's interesting.
I'm only backing Drago because I think it's one of those. Every time we look at a new set that drops, it's something that's like a defined deck. I mean, Charizard obviously is very defined in terms of its build anyway, but because of its BDIF position, it's so much more kind of defined in that it can just very easily adapt to a lot of metas. Yeah. Or even without having to necessarily adapt, it just plays the way it plays, right? And then it's able to take knockouts here, defend itself here, and sort of really cause really awkward scenarios for your opponent.
It is.
So I think it's a really cool deck.
It is interesting. So, just for some context, it's also fallen off in Japan, but I think in Japan, Raging Bot is by far and away the most played archetype, which is different to our meta. So there's a reason to be fearful in Japan from playing Drago, but it feels like going into Dortmund, there's the narrative of Charizard's on top again, and that's where you want to be as Drago. So I think that's like the key distinction as to why we're all sort of thinking Drago could be fine.
What's the triangle or pentagon that we're going to find ourselves as a meta?
Well, it could still be those 3 that I just mentioned, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I mean, exactly. Which part of the circle we're going to be at. So that's going to be the most interesting.
I think when to just touch on Zard again, I think, and I may not make any sense, and I'm going to just be spilling my brain here, but
Please.
I think the difference with Stella Crown compared to all the other sets that Zard has had to deal with, Zard has had to make changes on a defensive element. I feel like it's had to make changes to deal with multiple threats, but I think just that one addition of Briar, I think now it's flipped on the aggressive switch. It's kind of made those changes to become a more offensive deck.
That's a good point.
And I think thank you, genius. I think that
I'm glad you're on our level, Ben.
Now the elements changed a bit, and I think Zard's gone back on the aggressive, which isn't something that you want to see playing anything else, because Zard's already very powerful, but I think now it has an element of surprise and a way of adding further pressure than it already does.
It's not only a surprise, it's just uninteractive. You can't stop them sometimes. No. Like, it's so sad. Like, even if they don't have the board, they can do like Thornton stuff and still pop out for 3 prize turns, even without Briar. It's so just like, go on then, do your one search and see how your Fez does, and I guess you got 2 candies that turn. I can't play around that. Whoops.
You can't iron them, right? You iron them and they like, right, Fez, I'll just search out the one other card.
I guess we fall back into how Zard's had to kind of cycle around in terms of its quote unquote play style, with the different choices of ace specs, where it's, previously it's had max belt or prime catcher, moving into unfair stamp, and then back into things like
that's changed.
Prime catcher, unfair stamp, or other stuff right now, or
Cape's
even Kiro's
right
Cape.
As
well.
That's
changed. That's changed again now. Cape. Yeah.
So again, it's a really interesting spot, because we now say it's back on the offensive, because it's no longer a BDIF in a format, whereas previously it has been, right. It's been earmarked as this all-encompassing BDIF at that point.
Yeah.
So it had to go under defensive. So again, the meta is a very strange place to find ourselves in, especially going into a new tournament. Joe, you very quickly touched on Japan, and we had a look at that. Our next tournament that's actually coming up this weekend is the Champions League, the very first of the season, if I'm not incorrect, in Tokyo, I think it is.
Yes.
5,000 seats in the Masters League, 700 in each of the senior and junior tournament as well. Lots of things to look forward to, because they of course play with an additional, is it half set for them?
So they basically have
part of our Surging Spark.
Yeah, they have Paradise Dragona as well now, which will be our full Surging Sparks.
That'll be our full Surging Sparks. Yeah.
Okay.
So they've got the Alolan Executor, and they've got the Flygon, which are pretty much.
Don't forget that Sylveon EX deck
and Pikachu
that they released.
Well.
Yes.
I know that they're kind of poster boys of each set, so I know that they've got both. So they've got our full Surging Sparks set.
Yeah.
I think that sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
The big cards are like Ceruledge, but also from Dragona, specifically the Latias and the Duraludon, kind of interesting cards to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned just before we started this, I was a big fan of that Latias EX, which
it seems just like a very good card.
Basic Pokemon in play to have free, no retreat cost, which is really, really cool. All of those jargon aggro type decks, which wants to accelerate prizes as quick as possible, maneuver around very quickly, like Miraidon. I think it will probably find itself in quite quickly. We'll maybe see it do well.
I absolutely love the Ceruledge decks. Every time I see one, there's no difference in any of them. It's just 4.
Basic energy is the most important part about the deck.
it's like they play like 18 to 20 energy each, and they're just 4 of everything. It's quite funny.
I think that's going to be quite low tier of an archetype.
But
they are enjoying
You're
it.
joking.
Yeah,
they're enjoying it at leagues.
They are enjoying it at leagues.
Oh, you'll get some wins at league for sure. I mean, you won't need a gentleman's agreement when playing this. Let me tell you.
Was the Ceruledge released at the same time as the Sylveon deck? Because they were both in their own deck boxes, I think.
I'm not certain.
I
thought Ceruledge was pure Surging Sparks.
According to our buddy Jack Gold and his...
Oh, you're right. It is an EX deck. You're right. So, yeah, I guess Sylveon was out at the same time. Yeah, I don't know either, to be honest.
There's also, I think people are expecting Archaludon to do well as well, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. It's kind of it's kind of an older brother of Metagross GX, or people are making that comparison to Metagross GX. It's not strictly the same sort of approach, but you know, kind of promoting, putting two energy on and then picking up, you know, kind of doing your pickups, and of course being a stage 1, it's a big boy as well, 300 HP as well, so
it is a big bridge.
It'll be interesting to see how that manages in the format. Probably not well, but at least one to keep an eye on.
You just give it a chance, Ben.
It doesn't just attach to itself as well. It can attach to all sorts. It's going to be quite flexible, I think.
Yeah, you're talking Heatran.
You're talking slacking V. Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking
Wait,
Heatran.
I can't even say it. Alloy build. When you play this Pokemon for your hand to evolve.
It has to be. It does have to be metal Pokemon, to be fair. But
yeah, exactly. Come on, boys, slacking. Come on.
That's why I said Heatran.
I just wanted to mention slacking V. Okay, sue me.
Well, that Heatran. What is it?
Heatran Matang deck.
Yeah.
That was in the cup that I played in as well.
It was in mine as well.
Deck.
Somebody was playing it. I was like, yeah, go on.
I was like, I really hope they tie right now, so they're not on the record that I can face this deck.
If they get one Matang up against me, I am done. Like,
honestly, someone flips over Regidrago. I'm like, right, I know they're playing a good deck. Anyone could win here. This, that, and the other. But if they flip over a Heatran, I know that I'm in for a hell of a game. That was like the last card I want to see when I'm at a tournament.
Yeah, I knew.
Any
thoughts,
boys, on what might do well? I mean, very different in terms of the list, right? In comparison to what we might have seen. I don't know if you guys actually properly looked into some of the city leagues that have happened.
I'd like to see how Alolan Executor does on a serious level. 300 HP, stage 1, doesn't have any weakness. Quite a decent second attack. The problem being Stella is that it does have that awkward attack cost.
Oh, I actually hadn't read this attack properly.
Two
It's
energy.
a really weird one.
It's a really odd one. I would play it purely for the alt art. Only. If anybody hasn't seen one, please have a look. It's absolutely brilliant. It reminds me of Challengers, that recent film that came out.
I thought you'd be hyped for the counter game, Rab, among all else.
I am. I certainly am.
I think Control is one to watch this weekend.
Well, so only for a couple of months I have Bouffalon with counter game. Only for a couple of months.
The Lost Zone one, right?
I need to take full advantage of that Lost Origin Bouffalon. And also that's another deck that I've been kind of playing around with Stella Crown as well. It's it's already kind of nailed on from being out in Japan for so long, but it's certainly one to keep an eye on as well, but especially with that addition of counter gain. But yeah, Alolan Executor, no weakness, 300 HP, stage 1. You know, it could do things. You never know. But yeah, that's my only Pokemon really from the newer set. That'll probably be interesting.
Joe, final thoughts on the Champions League? And
I think it'll still be very worthwhile us watching from like our meta perspective as well, because I think there'll be still a huge number of the decks that are in our format that will be front and center. I think there'll be a decent amount of Dragapult played. I really hope we start seeing Noctowl, because Japan just haven't really used many Noctowl engines as far as I can tell. Like, they don't like Terrapagos as much as us. Palkia was like almost been and gone. It's not that popular for them. Yeah. So I really want to see just some Noctowl engines on display to give me more confidence in it, because I'm still like super locked into how insane the effect is. But it feels like it's being overlooked in at least the smaller tournaments, and it might take a bigger tournament like this to see a player who's put the time in for it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, well, if there's nothing much else to add, hopefully we'll get to all catch that on. I think it's normally streamed on YouTube and also on another Champions website as well. But
I think Azul is also going to be co-streaming as well. So.
Yeah, and as per usual, right?
Yeah.
When the opportunity presents. I think he did it for Baltimore, right? I don't think
he did. He chose not to attend Baltimore, yeah.
Decided to take a little break. It's all right for some people. Yeah, all right. Well, I think that wraps up most of our topics that we wanted to cover for these past 2 weeks and what's coming up for us and across the waters. What other fun news do we have coming up for ourselves, boys? We're busy this weekend, aren't we?
We are.
We're going to be seeing each other.
We're slinging cardboard over in Birmingham.
So I've been telling Harriet that I'm obviously playing Lorcana this weekend. She does know. She's.
I thought you were going to say you told her something else, and then you're just
I said, oh yeah, you know, we play, because she's always like, why are you playing this weekend? You don't even know how to play the game. I was like, I certainly know how to play.
Was that last weekend you were saying that?
Yeah. And then I said, if I don't know how to play, think about Alex Dow.
Oh yeah,
completely. Yeah, I mean, and this guy's going to be playing the same deck as me.
I am. Yeah, I'm playing the same deck.
But yeah, if anyone doesn't know, it is the Disney Lorcana Challenge this weekend at the NEC in Birmingham. So pretty close to. Well, actually, it's not too far from you, Joe, I guess, but close to a lot of our friends in the Midlands area, and we're all heading up and going to be competing in that event. It's really fun. Of course, we've got a fellow caster colleague who's behind the desk for that as well, and Ross Gilbert, and we've seen across other streams that we've seen other Pokemon players also pop up here, there, and everywhere as well. Robin Schultz last time, I think we saw.
Shay's playing as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course, Shay's playing. I think there's a bunch of Pokemon players that
just
we know from the UK.
I've been getting random DMs about what Lorcana deck I'm playing from Pokemon people. I'm like, well, how did you know, first of all?
It'll be a proper Spider-Man meme where we're all kind of just pointing at each other. I didn't know you played.
The best thing was today in a group chat, Maze just was like, oh, you guys are coming? I guess I'll just book a flight because I've got the ticket but can't be bothered. But I guess if there's enough people going, I'll make a day of it.
Literally a day. He said he was going to try and turn up in the morning and leave in the evening. So we were just like, yeah, come on.
Come on
bring
over.
It in. Very good.
There's room at Connor's, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Without telling Connor, should we just bring it along?
He'll find out through this pod. That'll be the test.
If he listens. But yeah, that should be fun. I mean, I actually only played my first game with you guys at your house today, so that was fun.
So you are both playing aggro decks, which, to be fair, do give you a chance against anyone.
That's why I'm playing.
Because you just have to count the mana cost, basically, or the ink cost, I suppose
I don't have to play any differently other than against Steel Song, I think.
Genius. What do you have to do differently?
What do you do against Steel Song?
How do you adapt?
Tell me the strat.
Don't go wide. Just
crazy.
Like, you know.
Oh my god.
Because they put 2 damage on everything, right?
That
crazy.
Get some draw power going.
You're ready. You are ready for the event.
I'm ready for the event. I was going to play Dalmatians originally, but Tamao said his testing didn't go well. So.
Oh, you're joking. And then I'm playing, for anyone who knows anything about Lorcana, I'm playing Ruby Amethyst because it's what I played in set 4. It's the only deck I know how to play. And I made like 5 changes, and that's nice. There you go. It's a tempo deck. Ta-da!
Just lots more jargon. As much jargon as possible.
If you don't know what that means, I'm not going to explain myself.
I'm playing Donald Duck Control.
That's because Joe doesn't know what it means.
Oh, I know.
Right, I think we probably should wrap it up here, boys. I mean, that was a quick a bit over an hour. Outside of any last FPL chat, Ben, because I know you're gagging.
Oh god, you didn't put the screen up, did you, Ralph?
No,
I thought you were going to.
I'm still reeling in from Celtic's 5-1 smashing last night of Slavia Bratislava.
Still talking about that. I don't care about that.
But FPL, you can load now.
In the Champions League.
Still top, regardless of Liverpool blanking, which I'm quite upset about. And I switched Gabriel to Robertson, which I'm even more unhappy about. But still better than you two, so I'm fine.
You giving up, Joe, yet?
I dropped 3 million places last week because I got an 18-point week with all blanks. I had literally only 1s and 2s from my players. The only person who returned was on my bench. So I had a catastrophic week. Both the players I subbed out returned for the first time, and Kunku returned, and can't remember the other sub I made, but they also returned, and the 2 that I brought in obviously didn't, so great. I played 1 sub this week, got Watkins in, which was on my spreadsheet to do the previous week, where he scored 2, and I went against it because he had a knock on the app, but then still played and whatever. So overall fuming and ready to get another red arrow this week. I was so annoyed. My dad is playing for the first time this year, and
first time, as in like never touched it before.
Never touched it before. Okay. Yeah, literally never touched it ever.
Wow.
And I help him with his transfers every week, and I've helped him roll the last 2 weeks. He's doing really well, by the way. But this week I was able to make 2 transfers that I've been dying to do in my team, but I'm having to put out fires everywhere else. So he's just he's flying off the handle, even though he started with the worst players. Like he's had Mohamed Kudus, John McGinn, joke players.
Was that his initial pick?
Yeah. So this was completely on. So he was on holiday when he did it, and he got help from someone else who's just doing the worst in our league, which is just embarrassing. But he's doing James is doing well just because he randomly has Kukurea, who's high rolling clean sheets and stuff. Great news all round. Big up James for his results.
Yeah, I mean, I had a very average week. I was 1 point lower than the average.
Yeah,
but that's probably because I banked. I was hoping for a point scoring game for Mo Salah. And
bro, I had triple Liverpool.
Yeah, I had triple Liverpool. I took out Gabriel.
Sounds like a you
I took
problem.
out Gabriel and Bruno for Diego Jota and Robertson, and they blanked.
Yeah, see, I had Gabriel on my bench. He was sat there for 15 points. Haaland was my vice captain.
That's even worse, actually. Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, but
Gabriel on the bench
it just shows
annoying,
my team scores. It just needs to pick the right captain. I've been alright.
Yeah.
Got 6 from Garnacho just for his 17-minute.
That is high roll. That is a classic.
He'll probably start. He played really well in the. It's only against.
Against BAR with Barcelona.
Barca. I'm telling my kids it was Barcelona. But I think he probably warrants a start. To be fair, so holding him's been all right.
Yeah, he was cheap enough. I think that was the main reason for squeezing him in.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. That's enough chat. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have stuck around this whole time, this hour, over an hour with us, to be honest. A quick thank you, I guess, because we never actually say it. If you actually like this, let us know. Either on YouTube, either on the podcast, and actually just message us. It doesn't matter. We do see the odd person come up to us and actually have a chat about our podcast as well. So that's all cool. But thank you very much for listening in for this week. Catch you guys later.
Bye.